Hey guys, TGKS Productions. So today I have a Last of Us Part 2 video for you, and I'm going to be breaking down and reviewing Naughty Dog's most recent video they put out regarding The Last of Us Part 2, and that was State of Play. This actually was shown live on a number of channels on YouTube May 27th um, at around 4 p.m. Eastern United States time. That's my time. And they went a little bit more in detail with the story and the gameplay of The Last of Us Part 2, as well as showing off a a never seen before gameplay clip at the very end. So we're just sort of going to be discussing and breaking down or reviewing, I guess you could say, what was shown off in that video. It was narrated by Neil Druckmann, the vice president of Naughty Dog, as well as the lead director of The Last of Us Part 2. And he gave off or gave out a number of lists of information. I guess it was some of it was review from what we've seen before, but also a lot of things that he hasn't talked about or that really Naughty Dog hasn't mentioned before in the past regarding The Last of Us Part 2. So we're just going to be breaking down and reviewing that and talking about it in this video. Now, one more thing I'd like to mention before we get into this four-part series that Naughty Dog is doing. I don't believe State of Play, the video that they put out May 27th, was actually originally part of this four-part series. As you can see, I'm actually putting the schedule up on the screen here. You see that they've already gone through Inside the Story, which was put out on May 13th, as well as Inside the Gameplay that was put out on May 20th, released on May 20th. And you see they added an extra date where it says Inside the Details. You see it says May 27th. They have that date crossed out. I'm assuming that's for State of Play, but it still has the 28th there. And I'm assuming that Inside the Details, it was originally supposed to be released on May 27th. They moved to the 28th because of them releasing State of Play. So again, I don't believe State of Play was originally part of this four-part series, but I'm definitely, very excited and very happy that Naughty Dog put this out because there was still a lot of information that was discussed by Neil Druckmann in this video that the fans can take away from. So I'm definitely still excited that they added this, I guess you could say, to this series. So the first 5 or 6 minutes of the State of Play video was mostly just review for fans that have been following Naughty Dog for, pretty much with all the information they've been releasing for The Last of Us Part 2, you would likely have known most of what they were talking about. However, after the first 5 or 6 minutes, what Neil Druckmann starts mentioning is definitely more interesting. The first thing that he states that I took note of, or I would say that was maybe not necessarily mentioned before, was that this game is going to span multiple seasons and climates. I know that I would say the two main settings that this game takes place in is Jackson, Wyoming, or at least the group Jackson and Wyoming, as well as Seattle, the city Seattle. So the different seasons and the climates that you're going to encounter with those two settings is definitely going to be different. I believe like the Jackson, Wyoming, I want to say that's more in like a mountainous region from what I was hearing, or the snow-capped mountains be more of a colder or snowy region, which obviously immediately what I was thinking of with these different climates and seasons. Obviously, if you're in more of a snowy region, uh, you know, as far as like survival is concerned, when you're fighting your enemies, you think about maybe it's easier for enemies to track you, whether through footprints or blood in the snow. Whereas maybe in more of a hotter region where, there's not going to be, maybe you're in the woods or something like that, maybe your enemies won't easily be able to track you, unless maybe they have a dog or something. But that was sort of what I was thinking about, is how that would play into the survival aspect of the game. So I'm definitely very excited about that. Not only does I would say that plays into the survival aspect of the game, but it also plays into the realism of the settings that you were placed in as far as, the climate and the seasons are concerned. It makes the game feel more realistic. The next thing Neil Druckmann mentions that is definitely very interesting, it was not in The Last of Us Part 1, is Ellie being able to use ropes to scale vertical planes. And as far as this being very useful, I can think of two, main scenarios that definitely play into this to this post-apocalyptic game, and that is survival and exploration. Obviously, with survival, you're going to be able to use that to get either maybe a height advantage on your enemies or just be able to get around your enemies altogether. As well as with exploration, this rope will be able to get you to, areas in the world that you wouldn't necessarily have been able to get to before without something like this, and obviously be able to, explore the world much more and find things that you may not have found without that item. So that's definitely very cool, and I'm excited to try this out in The Last of Us Part 2. Now, there are two main opposing groups that Neil Druckmann has mentioned that Ellie will be facing in The Last of Us Part 2. Of course, she'll be obviously having to face the infected, the zombies or the humanoids, however you want to refer to them as. But there are two main opposing human groups that she will be facing, and that is the WLF, or the Washington Liberation Front, as well as more of a religious, I guess, cult, you could say, and those are the Seraphites or Scars. And those are the two main groups that she's going to be facing off against on her, I guess, revenge mission, you could say, in her story. And, I would say that these have definitely been shown off. These two groups have definitely been shown off in a number of trailers and gameplay clips at this point. But again, these will be the two groups that she will be facing in her story or on her revenge mission. Now, Neil Druckmann also makes a statement about there being new stages of infected in The Last of Us Part 2, and he specifically names one, and those are the Chandlers. Now, the Chandlers he describes as them being heavily armored, so I'm assuming that they're probably going to be they're going to be able to take a lot of damage. There may even be certain guns, like maybe a pistol, may not be able to take them down. Who knows? You might need something like maybe even a shotgun to be able to fully take them down. But he does describe them as being heavily armored and also being able to explode with pretty much releasing a bunch of spores and actually burning their victims. I don't know necessarily how deadly these are. I didn't go into a ton of detail. I don't know if they're going to be sort of on the scale of like, the runners where they might just do some damage to you if they blow up in your face, or if maybe something on the clickers side or on the scale of the clickers where, you know, if you pretty much let a clicker get a hold of you, you're pretty much dead instantly. So I don't really know how deadly these are going to be. They seem like they can definitely be very deadly, but I'm definitely excited to see what else, what other infected are in store with the new stages. He says there's definitely going to be more, but this is the only one that he specifically talks about in this video. He also goes into some details about the combat in The Last of Us Part 2, and there's three main takeaways that I got from him. The first of which is that you can flee any situation and regain stealth. And I really like this aspect because there's a number of games that once you break stealth, that is it. And I do understand, obviously, like I think of GTA, for example, because obviously I have a lot of experience with that game. I think about like with certain situations where you break stealth in that game, there's really no way to regain it. And to a certain degree, that's somewhat realistic. Obviously, in a non-post-apocalyptic world where you have technology, you have radios. I mean, I'm sure they have radios in this game as well, but again, it's post-apocalyptic. Communication necessarily isn't always as fast, whereas in a non-post-apocalyptic world, communication is going to be a lot faster. Therefore, if you mess up stealth, it's pretty much over. But it's also quite ridiculous when enemies just out of nowhere figure out where you're hiding, where your exact position is, when in reality that would have not been possible. That it just sort of the game programs them to automatically find you. Whereas in this case, that's not going to happen. If you mess up, and you maybe don't take the best approach in the situation, if you flee, you can sort of, I guess, readjust yourself, reevaluate the situation, and come up with a different plan, and still, try to tackle the situation or the, your plan of attack in a stealth way. And I really like that aspect of the game. It definitely brings out the realism, and I'm really happy that they decided to take that approach there. So definitely excited about that. Next thing I took away from Neil Druckmann with combat, or the second thing, was that allies will meaningfully help you in combat encounters. And I've seen this even with The Last of Us Part 1. I'm probably about 40 or 50% of the way through that game currently. And I specifically remember back in like chapter 4 or 5, I think it was like titled Bill's Town, where you meet this character Bill. And remember, he was actually pretty helpful with helping you take down enemies or the infected. So I don't think they necessarily did a bad job with it in the first game, but I respect this aspect, and I enjoy this aspect, because there are some games where you have allies and you're really just like, what are you even doing here? Like, they're doing nothing to help you, and that's always very frustrating. Having another person there or an NPC, and they're really doing nothing to help you at all. So I'm really happy that in this case, allies will help you in your situations, and they will be beneficial to you in having them, in combat situations. The third and final thing that Neil Druckmann mentions regarding combat is that you will have both types of enemies in certain situations. So you may have both infected and an opposing enemy, or human enemy, such as the, WLF, the Washington Liberation Front, or the Seraphites or the Scars to face at the same time. And this is really cool because as far as my experience from The Last of Us Part 1, for the most part, I believe that you really only face one or the other the majority of the time. You're either usually facing infected or you're just facing the humans, not really both at the same time. So this definitely adds more of a dynamic combat situation. And what's cool, what he actually mentions, you can pit enemies against each other. So you can actually have the infected, uh, you know, fighting your opposing, human, I guess, group like the Seraphites or the WLFs, and to have them sort of thin themselves out and then go up against them. So I thought that was extremely cool and definitely adds a lot more, I guess, or makes the combat situation much more dynamic. And obviously, instilling your decisions are extremely important. So I'm definitely very excited about that. The last thing Neil Druckmann mentions in this video is he talks a little bit about crafting. Crafting was present in The Last of Us Part 1. I'm assuming it's probably going to be, expanded on in The Last of Us Part 2. He mentions how there's going to be sort of, I guess, crafting or training manuals spread out throughout the world. And I believe there were some even in The Last of Us Part 1. I don't 100% sure. Don't quote me on that, but I do believe there were some manuals you could find in The Last of Us Part 1. But I know that there were obviously workbenches that you could upgrade your weapons, like as far as like maybe the accuracy or like the reload speed. But as far as what Neil Druckmann is stating, it seems like personalization for weapons is definitely going to be expanded on. And obviously, I really enjoy that. Obviously, weapons are going to be a big part of this game. It's a survival game. They're going to be very important for dealing with, infected or, both types of enemies, infected as well as the human groups. So obviously, they're very important. But I would say that, basically he was just saying that crafting will be expanded on as well as, weapon personalization overall. So pretty much the last part of the state of play video just covers a very lengthy, never seen before uh, gameplay clip or gameplay footage that the fans have ever seen before. And what's really interesting though is at the very end of this clip, we actually get, I would say, some confirmation on a new character as far as like the voice actor is concerned. You actually might know who this is from another, I would say, upcoming and popular TV series known as All American. She's the actor Chelsea Tavares, and she actually plays a character in this show All American, which essentially centers around this character Spencer James and sort of his journey into the NFL. And it's actually based on a true story, but her character is Patience in that show. Chelsea Tavares' character in All American, and she's actually the girlfriend of Spencer James' very close childhood friend Coop. So you might know who she is from that series. If you watched her, I'd say that's probably where most of her fame has come from. But I do believe this is her. She actually put out some Instagram posts that I'll actually show you up on the screen here. These were actually posted on December 30th. And this pretty much confirms that she is part of the Last of Us Part 2 cast. And I'll actually show you a clip here from the very end of the gameplay. And I do believe this is Chelsea Tavares' character, Nora, that she is the voice actor of.
Maybe if you posted more guards, Abby would still be herself.
The fuck was Abby here?
I'm not stupid. You're gonna tell us where she went.
When Isaac talks to us about this...
I'm getting tired of this.
Nora. Nora! I'm not going down for her, man.
Don't scream. Put that shit down. You remember me?
So there you have it, the character that Ellie has at gunpoint at the end. I do believe, we know it's Nora, but I do believe it is this character is played by Chelsea Tavares. And just to further support this and sort of prove this idea, Chelsea Tavares actually put out a Instagram or something on her Instagram story, or a post on her Instagram story the day that this was released, May 27th. Actually, pretty much putting in Spanish there, I believe that translates to "Did you see her? Hello, Nora." So that's pretty much confirming that that is her character. And obviously, like I said, we established earlier that she posted on December 30th, 2019, that she was part of this cast. So I do believe this is her character. I do believe she pretty much officially confirmed this. This is definitely very cool. I'm not really sure what group she's in. I know earlier in the gameplay footage, I heard some of the enemies of, I guess, the group that Nora's in, saying that there were no scars around. So I'm assuming maybe these are the WLF group, but I'm not 100% sure. It's not really confirmed. They keep talking about Isaac. I don't even know if Isaac was ever mentioned before. Forgive me if I may have missed that, but uh, there's a lot of talk about Isaac in this group. Maybe he's some sort of leader. I don't really know, but it is cool to sort of get some confirmation on Nora and her voice actor and learn about this new character. Obviously, still very bland. We don't know a lot about her, but it is cool that we learned who the voice actor is. But in any case, guys, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown and review video of this state of play for The Last of Us Part 2. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video. Be sure to comment if you have any questions. And as always, have a great day.